Phenomenal day. It is presently August 10th, 2026. It is a lovely Monday. And I am going to start out with saying I'm grateful that, after resetting my internet and um, refreshing my YouTube screen before, you know, I was able to finally go live. I'm happy that we've made some progress here, and hopefully we won't have to deal with the type of interruptions that we had to manage last week. With that being said, we are in week 2 of our natural hair care and styling masterclass. Thank God for that. Okay. And this week we're focusing on infection control principles and practices. Now, from our My Lady's textbook, this chapter is one of the longer ones. Okay, it's 33 pages. And when I was taking this chapter in school, it was one of the weightier ones. Okay, it's, if you're squeamish or, not a fan of like germs and bacteria and viruses and stuff like that, it could be a little much to get through, but it's important to have, certain awarenesses and so forth for things like infection control. Um, you know, I'm a big advocate of washing your hands as many times as you need to a day, even if that's like 1,000 times in a day. Okay, I'm her. And so, with that said, I just want to quickly just check and make sure that the Empress Network, the Empress Network, there we go. Mic check 1 2 1 2. All right. So everything looks good. The sound looks good. Sounds good. And we're gonna go ahead and get on into it because, um, like I said, we had several interruptions last week that completely threw my schedule off. And with all of those interruptions throwing my schedule off, I'm playing catch up this week with, the hairstyling business as far as the content that I had planned on my schedule to produce and create, as well as, you my financial services business. We have weekly meetings and Zooms and so forth. So I just have quite a bit, but I went to bed early last night, got some good rest, got me some good homemade coffee this morning with my 30-minute walk on the treadmill, and your girl's feeling good and ready to get through it. Okay, glad we had that conversation. I hope your weekend was well, or, I don't know why I be saying that like this isn't timeless, but okay. All right, mine was productive for sure. All right, so for chapter 2, infection control principles and practices, again, we have the My Lady Standard Natural Hair Care and Braiding book. I actually shared the PDF version on Patreon. So if you want to go ahead and, join me on Patreon, whether you choose to be a free subscriber or if you want to support the platform and what I'm doing, we have a $11 a month family and friends membership. Your support will be greatly appreciated, of course. But with that, you'll be able to access, all of the content that I share over there. Okay. So this chapter is going to outline why study infection control principles and practices, the regulatory guidelines for health control, infectious diseases, principles of prevention and infection control, how to use antiseptics and disinfectants, universal precautions, salon wellness, and professional salon image. Okay. We have a nice little list of key terms here. And I'm gonna just mention our 5 learning objectives really quickly, so we'll have an idea of what we're looking to, learn from this chapter. Okay. So after completing this chapter, you should be able to, one, understand the state laws and rules regarding infection control. Number two, list the types of bacteria and their classifications. Three, explain how bloodborne pathogens are transmitted. Four, explain the differences between cleaning, disinfecting, and sterilizing. Five, discuss universal precautions. Now, I got an A on this chapter, even though I took the test twice, because we had the option pretty much to, we did okay or didn't pass. For me, I did okay. Then you have an option to retake it to score better. So I believe the first time I may have gotten like a B or a low A. I forgot which one. I'll go back and check it. I have it saved on my computer, which I am going to share my test scores more later down the line. But from each chapter, when we actually go through and, do like question and answers or whatever, like talk about what we've learned and do like little quizzes and tests, okay? Um, but with that being said, this was a challenging, chapter. I'm not going to say hard, but it was challenging. It's a lot to learn, but it's important stuff to learn. Okay. So we have key terms like acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which is AIDS. Okay. Allergy, antibiotics, antiseptics, artificially acquired immunity, asymptomatic, bacilli, bacteria, binary fission, bleach, cilia, cleaning, kochi, contagious, decontamination, diplococi, disinfectants, disinfection, efficacy, exposure incident, flagella, fungi, hepatitis, hepatitis A, B, C, and D. Okay, each one are categorized. They have their own definitions, okay? We have hospital disinfectants, human immunodeficiency virus, which is HIV, immune system, immunization, inflammation, methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is MRSA, some know as MRSA, microorganisms, mildew, multi-use, naturally acquired immunity, non-pathogenic bacteria, non-porous surfaces, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, parasites, pathogenic bacteria, pediculosis capitis, phenolic disinfectants, porous, quaternary ammonium compounds, safety data sheets, which is SDS, and scabies. Okay, we have some more here. We have scatula, single use, spirilla, spores, staphylococcus, sterilization, streptococcus, tinea, tinea barbae, tinea capitatis, tinea favosa, tuberculocidal disinfectants, universal precautions, and virus. So those are our key terms or our vocabulary words for this chapter. Okay, so you'll hear them, when we get to the specific ones and you could take notes. But you can also, like I said, go check it out on Patreon. I'll make sure I'll leave that in the description box. Um, the actual link to um, basically the tools that you need for this class, okay? All right, so depending on how quickly we get through this will determine if we'll be able to do any demonstrations this week. To be honest, with everything that I have to get caught up on, I don't see it at the moment, but who knows? If everything goes smoothly, I don't have any interruptions, and I just have a very powerful, productive day, then we might get into a demonstration that we couldn't last week because of the technical, interruptions and so forth that were out of my control. All right. All right. So we have a picture, an image here. I like to share those. This is a clean salon, is inviting, organized, and safe. It's a little old school, classic looking salon, but it's clean nonetheless. A good example. All right, so infection and disease control are some of the most important aspects of being a natural stylist or salon professional. To be a successful natural professional, it is vital to be knowledgeable about and responsible for the basic information regarding good health and cleaning practices within the work environment. You cannot have a successful salon business without a clean and disease free salon. Infection control and effective health and decontamination systems are a major part of every successful salon business practice. Infection control is also a major part of protecting the staff and clients while also improving client confidence, retention, and client referral. Okay. So, why study infection control principles and practices? Natural stylists should study and have a thorough understanding of infection control principles and practices because to be knowledgeable, successful, and responsible professionals in the natural hair care and braiding industry, you are required to understand the types of infections you may encounter in the salon. Every stylist should know when, why, and how to use good decontamination practices to protect the individual and the community. Understanding the basic cleaning and disinfecting rules and following federal and state laws will safeguard you, the stylist, the client, and the salon environment. It is important to understand the chemistry of cleaning and disinfecting products that you use in the salon, removing all disease causing agents in a salon is almost impossible. But our jobs require us to manage, control, and create balance by reducing any dangerous levels of germs and diseases. This is the key to a safe and successful salon business. Regulatory guidelines for health control. State and federal regulations require that certain preventative measures be taken against the spread of infectious disease and germs, or the salon operator's business can be shut down. Each state has specific regulations that address the responsibilities of the salon owner as well as the renter of a salon booth or chair. The regulations are standardized health and sanitary codes that all natural hair care specialists, braiders, locticians, and barbers must comply with. Keep the regulations handy and refer to them often. Be sure to be sure to check for changes and updates with your state regulatory agency. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, again, that is OSHA. Okay. The federal agency that monitors safety and health standards in the workplace is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. As part of the U.S. Department of Labor, OSHA was developed to regulate, protect, and inform employees about exposure to potential hazardous or toxic materials in the work environment. OSHA focuses its safety and health concerns on the work environment and employee protection. The primary functions of OSHA are to regulate, monitor, and ensure employee safety from toxic materials used in the work area and reduce exposure to infectious diseases. The braid stylist is vulnerable to daily exposure to bacteria and infection. Although natural stylists do not use chemicals to alter hair textures, other chemicals in the salon, such as antiseptics, cleaners, disinfectants, styling aids, shampoos, and conditioners are used, and these products have guidelines, OSHA and hazardous products. It is the stylist's responsibility to be aware of product contents to protect themselves and their clients. Since 1970, all chemical manufacturers and importers must analyze and communicate any potential hazards associated with their products. When that information is finalized, the SDS, which is the safety data sheets, are developed to accompany the product, which informs the buyer of any potentially hazardous ingredients, usage, and safety precautions. All right, so we have developed systems for safety. Anybody that knows me knows I love systems, okay? Like I, I develop them, I create them, I love them, period. This ain't about me though. Okay, it is important for the natural salon professional to develop a system, a set of procedures that help reduce the risk of exposure to infectious diseases and hazardous product ingredients. The system must be uncomplicated, concise, and follow state procedures. There should be a written plan or checklist of procedures that ensure safety and that emphasizes a responsibility to protect and provide services with integrity. The following sections will help you to develop a safety checklist. Okay, so our SDS again stands for, or is the acronym for Safety Data Sheets. Safety data sheets, formerly known as material safety data sheets, contain manufacturers' information about product safety. This includes names of hazardous ingredients along with specific codes, the physical and chemical characteristics of the product, proper handling procedures, precautions to reduce risk, procedures in case of accidents or overexposure, and warning about flammability or explosion. The SDS also provides information on how to dispose of the product in a way that is environmentally safe, as well as medical or first aid information. Federal and state laws require salons to obtain SDS from the product manufacturers and or distributors for each professional product that is used. The SDS often can be downloaded from the product manufacturers or the distributor's website. Not having the SDS available poses a health risk to anyone exposed to hazardous materials and violates federal and state regulations. Salons and schools are subject to inspection by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and state boards of beauty enhancement. Both require that the SDS be kept available at all times during salon business hours. Both the OSHA and the state board inspectors can issue fines for not having the SDS available. It is important for every employee to read the SDS information, whether they use the product or not. Okay, so organize your salon's SDS. Take a sip here of my green smoothie. Sometimes the oats and seeds might get stuck to my lipstick. Pardon me. Okay, multitasking. All right, we getting it done though. All right, so the organize your salons SDS. Develop a system to organize the salon's SDS and keep a record that each employee has read and is knowledgeable about the usage and disposal of all hair products, disinfectants, sanitizers, or other solvents used in the salon. SDS sheets can be downloaded from the manufacturer's website and placed in 3-ring binders to give everyone easy access. Mark the book in bright colors and write SDS on the front and sides so that employees can easily recognize it. Place SDS binders near the front desk and at the back bar. Every time a new product arrives in the salon and it's, add it to the SDS binder. After reading the materials in the SDS binder, each employee must sign and acknowledge that they have read the information. Felt like something was on my lip. The EPA, which stands for Environmental Protection Agency. Okay. The Environmental Protection Agency sets high standards for manufacturers of products that claim to kill germs, fungi, or viruses. All disinfectants must be registered with the EPA. An EPA registration number is given to products that have the highest level of germicidal, fungicidal, or virucidal disinfectants. Disinfectants are chemical products that kill all bacteria, fungi, but not spores, and viruses on working surfaces. Household disinfectants will not kill the various bacteria you will be exposed to when in the salon. Two types of EPA disinfectants. Okay. Two types of EPA disinfectants are specifically produced to be effective in a work environment and kill bacterial organisms. Hospital disinfectants are effective for killing bacteria in blood or bloody fluids on implements and surfaces. I'm going to read that again. Hospital disinfectants are effective for killing bacteria in blood or bloody fluids on implements and surfaces. These chemical agents are used to destroy most bacteria and viruses that cause disease. They are not to be used on skin. Disinfectants are to be used on non-porous surfaces in the salon. That is service equipment, implements, furnishings, floors, walls, and communication equipment. Tuberculocidal disinfectants are chemical agents that are known to kill the bacteria that cause tuberculosis, a bacterial disease that is transmitted through sneezing and coughing. These bacteria and spores, coughing. These bacteria and spores, which are much harder to destroy, create sores. Tuberculocidal disinfectants are extremely powerful and must be used with extreme caution. These agents can be harmful to salon tools and equipment. Check in your state to determine that the products you choose comply with state statements and are EPA approved. Follow the product label instructions for mixing and surface application to comply with state laws. You can be held responsible if a lawsuit is brought against your workplace. State compliance. Every state has regulatory agencies that exist to protect the salon industry, the consumer safety, and the health and well being of the community. State regulatory agencies include the licensing department, State Board of Natural Hairstyling, and health departments. These regulatory agencies develop and enforce rules and procedures that all natural hair care professionals must follow. The state agencies enforce the rules or regulations with salon inspections and the investigations of consumer complaints. Penalties vary from state to state and include warning notices, fines, probation, and suspension or revocation of licenses. Following the regulation is vital to a salon's success and reputation, as well as to client safety. All right, so FYI, providing a harmonious and safe environment is more than just weekly cleansing. It is a continuous practice of maintaining the preventative standards, the diligent care of tools and surfaces, and good personal hygiene that controls the spread of disease and infection. All right. Everything in the salon has a working surface: the tables, counters, chairs, floors, shelves, mirrors, tools, and implements. All surfaces, especially tool surfaces, must be kept free from contaminants such as dirt, oils, debris, and micropathogens. You are decontaminating your salon by removing these disease causing substances. Decontamination of tools and surfaces is maintained on three levels: cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. All right. So next we're headed to the part on infectious diseases. All right, so we're talking about bacteria first. Okay. I have a tendency of, flipping the pages to kind of get an idea of how far we're going to get done today. If I didn't mention already, this chapter is like 33 pages. So it's pretty, a lot of information. But the beautiful thing about this being recorded is you can rewind it, stop, replay it, all that. Okay. Ugh. I hate the pictures of the bugs and the infected areas and stuff. I don't know how far we're gonna get today. I'm gonna try and get as far in the chapter as possible. At least get to the antiseptics. That's a lot of reading, honey. That is a lot of reading. But if I could finish in 2 days like we did last week, that would be phenomenal. Let's just read and see, okay? All right. So bacteria are tiny one-celled microorganisms that have both vegetable and animal characteristics. They can exist nearly anywhere in water and air, on clothing, beneath nails, and on skin, in bodily fluids, and on surfaces. They are so small you can see them only with a microscope. Bacteria, also known as germs, are especially numerous in dust, dirt, garbage, decayed matter, and diseased tissue. Okay. So we have here, I'm going to hold it up in a second, but we have figures 2A, B, C, and D that shows different forms of bacteria. Okay. So you see those little circly things. Trying to put it up just in case you want to screenshot it to study it. All right, so I'm going to read it. All right, so figure 2A is Cocci, spelled Cocci. Figure 2B is Staphylococcus, okay, spelled Staphyloccocci. That's in case I'm misspelling it and you would like to, Google WebMD or whatever, however, to see, learn more information for those who are interested in, this type of stuff, okay? Medical stuff, okay? Then we have streptococci. I said cokie and then I switched to cocci. I forgot which one it is, but figure 2C is streptococci. Figure 2D is diplococci. Okay. So they all have their own characteristics. Learn more about as we proceed, but that's the intro to the names and the images that go with them. All right, so the types of bacteria. The earth has thousands of different types of bacteria. However, they fall into two primary categories: non-pathogenic and pathogenic. Non-pathogenic bacteria are harmless organisms that do not cause disease, but have useful functions like yogurt, cheese, and some medicines. Healthy bacteria, like probiotics, help the body digest food, and antibiotics help the body fight infection. Non-pathogenic bacteria help stimulate the immune system. They can inhibit the growth of microorganisms or destroy them. Okay, so with pathogenic bacteria, the opposite. Okay, these are harmful organisms that cause infection and disease when they enter the body. When we are cleaning our salons, we are trying to reduce and prevent the spread of these organisms. While in school, you must learn and understand the importance of infection control practices to ensure that you maintain the same high standards when starting your career. Okay. So we're going to go down the list. There's a chart here of the causes of disease and their definitions. Okay. So bacteria is a one-celled organism having both plant and animal characteristics. Some are harmful, some are harmless. Okay. We have direct transmission. This is the transmission of blood or bodily fluids through touching. This includes shaking hands, okay? Kissing, coughing, sneezing, and talking. Again, that is direct transmission of disease, okay? Indirect transmission is the transmission of blood or body fluids through contact and intermediate contaminated object, such as a razor, extractor, nipper, or an environmental surface. Again, those are indirect transmission of disease. Infection, invasion of body tissue by disease causing pathogens. Germs are non-scientific synonym for disease producing organisms. Microorganisms, any organism of microscopic to submicroscopic size. Parasites, organisms that grow, feed, and shelter on or in another organism, referred to as the host. Okay, parasites are referred to as the host. That's key. While contributing nothing to the universe, while contributing nothing to the survival of that organism. Parasites must have a host to survive, okay? Toxins. We hear that thrown around so much these days with toxic people and, you know, focus. Toxins. Various poisonous substances by some microorganisms. Toxins are considered to be bacteria and viruses. And we have virus, okay? These, again, are all causes of disease. A virus is a parasitic, submicroscopic particle that infects and resides in cells of biological organisms. A virus is capable of replication only through taking over the host cell's reproductive function. Okay, so I'm gonna go into this, but I'm being inspired because, for those that don't know, outside of me having my experience in the beauty industry and the work that I do here, um, you know, holistic health matters and things is something that I've been interested in. And I wanted to share this because, it's not gross being at what we're covering here. But this past weekend, I had a travel appointment with a client. And I didn't pack my lunch because I didn't have time to cook and everything. So I did something that I try to do as least as possible. I prefer, to grocery shop, hand pick my groceries, know what I'm putting in my body as much as possible, because we don't know the handling process before it gets to us. But, I use my intuition, um, my vision of sight, and, faith and trust, and, you know, those types of things when I'm picking up food. So I prefer to, prepare my meals at home as much as possible. But when I have to eat out, I'm like, okay, I'm picky. I like to go places where I can see them preparing the food. Long story short, this weekend I went to a Subway and I had a sandwich, I kind of been staying more on the pescatarian side, so fish, is my choice of protein, meat, or whatever. And then I do a lot of vegetables. I choose like wheat, grains, and stuff like that, rice and breads and pasta, versus the bleached versions. Anyway, I ate my sandwich. I dogged it because I was so hungry. Okay, I had a smoothie before a smoothie and coffee and water going to my client. And that was all I had. So when I finished, I was hungry. And I stopped by my mom's. I gave her a little haircut. A lot of details, I know, but it's all good. Um, I came home and took a shower, got cleaned up and everything, and I went to go brush my teeth. And when I tell you, I hacked up something that was so disgusting, I have no idea what it was. I haven't seen something like that, or I don't know. I don't know what it was, but um, literally, and this was while I was brushing my teeth. I had actually drank like I had some chai water, chai lemonade or lemon water that I made at home. So I had that to drink. Thank God for that. Um, and I just drank that with lemonade. So that on top of me, I don't know, brushing my teeth, using peppermint soap and all that must have brought it up. But I kind of felt like some sort of weird mucusy feel. And yeah, I hacked it up and I spit it out and I was like, what was that? And literally the first thing I said it out loud too. I was like, see, this is why I don't eat out. This is why I eat at home because of stuff like that. And I know for a fact, if I had not spit that out and I would have been full of mucus and not feeling well for the rest of the weekend. Like I was so paranoid after that. I just kept going to the bathroom, like getting up. It took me a while to actually lay down and rest because I kept getting up and like going to, rinse my mouth, gargle and spit to make sure that I got all of it. But I'm like, that's how we get sick. I don't know what that was that I picked up or whatever, but I'm glad that I eliminated it before I went to bed, and took that to bed with me. Like it kind of almost reminded me of like Ghostbusters or something. It was so weird. I was disgusted though, but you know, I don't play when it comes to stuff like that. Handling my food, meal prep food. Look, I don't want to be arguing, fighting, or worried or stressing with nobody about it. So I'll do it at home. Okay. And that's why I also consume when I do eat out. And then sometimes when I'm skeptical about what's being purchased at the grocery store, I also consume things like turmeric, thyme, cinnamon, lemon, just certain sea moss, my greens, spirulina, like different things that apple cider vinegar that naturally cleanses the body. And I'm sharing this also too, I guess, because as beauty professionals and me having over 20 years of experience from, shampoo assistant to, you know, whatever level you want to say I'm at now. Um, with all of that experience I've seen from my own personal experience and other professionals that I work with, with people eating when they can and eating products and all the germs and all that type of stuff. um, just being more mindful is important because we need to take care of ourselves, so we make sure that we're reducing our time, our downtime of being unwell, unable to work type of stuff as professionals, but also we want to be mindful that our clients aren't leaving um, a visit from getting their hair done or getting a beauty service and dealing with things that they weren't dealing with previously that are unfavorable, unsanitary, and that type of stuff. um, yeah, okay. And another thing, last night I did my own like basic manicure, kind of like trim my nails down and finally did my cuticles, trim my cuticles. I got a little kit at home because, I was debating if I wanted to share this, but the second to last I went to a nail salon, I got wingworm on my foot. And that was something that I'd never seen before, and I was utterly disgusted by. Um, it went away, and you can't even tell that it was ever there. This was a few years ago. But since then, I've been like afraid to go to the salon and get like manicures and pedicures and stuff. I just do my stuff at home. Um, but yeah, I treated that with apple cider vinegar. I didn't even know what to treat it with. That was just what spoke with me. And it did help for it to, gradually go away and stop like itching and spreading and ugh. But after I went through that, that even opened my eyes even more. It made me even more as a beauty professional hairstylist, like that much more conscious and aware of the importance of this chapter that I'm going to get back into. Okay. You know, for somebody that may have went away but, and got bored with the details that I'm about to share, I'm hoping that that kind of brought you back in. Okay. All right. The classifications of pathogenic bacteria. Bacteria have three distinct shapes that help to identify them. Pathogenic bacteria are classified as follows. Kasi or Koki, however, I might be pronouncing it incorrectly, but we went over that a little while ago, are round shaped organisms that appear singly or in the following groups. Okay. We have Staphylococcus, which is pus-forming organisms that grow in bunches or clusters. They cause abscesses, pustules, and boils. Then there's Streptococcus. These are pus-forming organisms that grow in chains. They cause infections such as strep throat and blood poisoning. Then there's Diplococcus, organisms that grow in pairs and cause pneumonia. Okay, we have bacilli. These are short rod shaped organisms. They are the most common bacteria and produce diseases such as tetanus, also known as lockjaw, influenza, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. Sporilla are curved or corkscrew shaped organisms. They are subdivided into several groups. Of chief importance to us is the Treponema Okay, that was a mouthful. I'm going to spell it Treponema, and I'm going to try to pronounce it again. Treponema pallida, okay, which causes syphilis. Okay, Sporilla syphilis. Bacilli is tetanus, influenza, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. And Koki are the pus-forming organisms that cause things from abscess, pustules, boils, strep throat and blood poisoning, and pneumonia in different, you know, classifications. Okay. Again, you can rewind this. You can also check out the PDH that we shared on Patreon. All right. So movement of bacteria. When bacteria are alive, the organisms move in different ways. Kasi rarely show active self movement or motility. They are transmitted through the air, in dust, or in the substance they settle in. Bacilli and spirilla both have self movement and use hair like projections known as flagella or cilia. For locomotion, moving about, a whip like motion of these hairs propels bacteria about in liquid. Okay. Bacterial growth and reproduction. Bacteria have a life cycle. They manufacture their own food from the surrounding environment, whether they are inside or outside the body. They give off waste products, grow, and reproduce. The life cycle of bacteria consists of the active stage or the inactive spore forming stage. Active stage bacteria grow and reproduce. They multiply in warm, dark places with sufficient food. Once they reach their largest size, they divide into cells. This process is also known as binary fission. The cells can multiply every 20 to 60 minutes. Wow. Wow. They can multiply every 20 to 60 minutes. That's 3 times an hour at max, to hourly. And some bacteria can grow even faster. The pathogen Staphylococcus can increase its cell division every 27 to 30 minutes. Now, remind you, Staphylococcus is the pus-forming organisms that grow in bunches or clusters. They cause abscess, pustules, and boils, okay? And they can increase their cell division every 27 to 30 minutes. When conditions become unfavorable, bacteria either die or become inactive. In the active or spore forming stage, spores may form on certain bacteria to withstand unfavorable conditions such as cold, heat, and dryness. They can be blown about and are not harmed while in this stage. When conditions are favorable, the bacteria spores grow, reproduce, and change into the active phase. Bacterial infections. No infection can take place without the presence of pathogenic bacteria. An infection occurs when the body is unable to cope with the bacteria and their harmful toxins. A local infection is indicated by a boil or pimple that contains pus. They may be, there may be inflammation, a condition in which the body reacts to injury, irritation, or infection and is categorized by swelling, redness, heat, or fever and pain. The presence of pus is a sign of bacterial infection. Bacteria waste matter, decayed tissue, body cells, and living and dead blood cells are all found in pus. Staphylococcus are the most common pus-forming bacteria and are generally carried by 1/3 of the population. Staph, as it is often called, can be picked up on doorknobs, phone handles, work surfaces, unsterilized tools, and implements, as well as by skin to skin contact. A general infection results when the bloodstream carries the bacteria and their toxins to all parts of the body. Staph infections are the most common complaint in the salon. Staph is responsible for food poisoning, toxic shock syndrome, and a wide range of other diseases. One staph bacterial infection that is extremely resistant to antibiotics is methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus, also known as MRSA, MRSA. Okay. MRSA was generally found in people with weakened immune systems. Currently, it has been found in perfectly healthy people. Some people just carry the bacteria around with them without knowing. They have no symptoms, but they are infecting others. MRSA first appears as a skin infection in the form of pimples, rashes, or boils that are resistant to treatment. If not properly treated, MRSA can go throughout the entire body and cause death. It is vital to clean and disinfect all tools, implements, and the salon environment to reduce the impact of these resistant bacteria on the community. A disease becomes contagious or communicable when it spreads from one person to another by contact. I'm going to repeat that. It's important. I'm going to hear it quite often, okay? A disease becomes contagious or communicable. They mean the same thing, okay? When it spreads from one person to another by contact. Contagious, communicable, contact, okay? Some of the most common contagious diseases that prevent a stylist from working are tuberculosis, the common cold, ringworm, scabies, head lice, and viral infections. The chief sources of contagion are unclean hands and implements. Contagious diseases can also be spread by open sores, pus, mouth and nose discharges, okay? So people coughing, sneezing, not covering, okay? Being respectful of the environment and, the people in the environment. I'm also big on that type of stuff, which is why I prefer working at home and reducing my outside, the public. I probably shouldn't be putting that in here like that, but it's the truth. I'm a homebody and, that person in that way for that reason. I don't like to have to be giving people the ugly face or thinking about giving them the ugly face in my head because they're being inconsiderate and coughing and sneezing and not being mindful of, other people type of stuff. Okay. I've experienced it far too often. I'm a little bit more patient when it comes to children, even though I'm like a parent. And at this age, why didn't they raise you to know better? I'm her. Sorry. I don't mean to be. God made me this way. But when an adult does it, I'm just like, Jesus be offense. Back to this. All right. The chief sources of contagion are unclean hands and implements. Contagious diseases can also be spread by open sores, pus, mouth, and nose discharges, shared drinking cups, telephone receivers, and towels. Uncovered coughing or sneezing and spitting in public also spread germs. Infectious infections can be prevented and controlled through personal hygiene and environmental cleaning. Okay, we have another FYI. Okay, a disease results when bacteria is carried throughout the body. It becomes communicable or contagious when it spreads from one person to another. Okay. Some common contagious diseases are tuberculosis, the common cold, ringworm, viral infections, head lice, MRSA, and HPV. Okay. So we have two caution boxes here that we're going to read. Sometimes things are a little repetitive, but we know repetition is good for remembering and recalling and just understanding. Okay. So caution. Number one. As a professional natural stylist, you are not required to perform any hair service on any client who has visible signs of scalp infections, open cuts or sores, rashes, abrasions, bleeding wounds, or inflammation. The natural hair care specialist is required only to work on healthy hair and scalp. If a client comes into the salon, you are required to inform the client that you see an open cut, pimple, or infection, and then refer the client to a physician. As salon professionals, we are not permitted to treat infectious diseases or extremely contagious disorders. Always be professional and compassionate about the client's need for privacy in the salon. Once I read the second caution, I'm going to give a real life experience with that as well. Okay. Caution number two. Contagious diseases caused by parasites should never be treated in a school or salon. A disease becomes communicable or contagious when it spreads from one person to another. Okay, and that's page 33 in chapter 2. Okay, so we have another list of terms related to disease with their definitions. We're going to go through that in a minute. Um, after I share this quick story. So I would say, what was this? Around 20, what year is this? 2022. So about 4 years ago, maybe. Um, was my first time actually working in, actually like on a barbershop floor in a barbershop with suites. Okay. I've worked in barbershops and suites before, but I worked in the suites years prior. But I actually was new in a specific city. Um, and, me being on the floor, it was a busy location. So it helped people to know that I was there to see my work. I was one of the first faces they would see when they came in. So I stayed busy. But one thing I will say that was very disturbing and uncomfortable for me at that time was, I was seeing things that I had never seen before when it comes to this chapter. Okay. Um, I'm used to more or less working in suites or having my own space where I kind of control the cleanliness and, sanitation and everything of that area. Even if I had whether I had an assistant or I didn't. And when I was busy in the past, I usually had an assistant that, knew my standards and how I like my space, my workspaces from the shampoo bowl, the floor, the chair, my actual station that houses my tools and products and all that, my standards for all of that. So when I wasn't doing it, I had someone working with me to do it for me. But at this time, I was in a starting over. This was after me coming back to work from the pandemic. Due to the pandemic, I took that so serious where I literally took a couple years off and I was just like in a space of thinking I was retired from behind the chair because I just didn't know what to expect when it came to, you know, health and well-being, after that season. And I just wasn't into being that close to people and taking them type of chances with my life. And the vaccine was never an option for me. Like, I didn't even consider it. I didn't get sick. I thank God for that. Okay. I didn't even get the common cold during that time, which was very interesting. And, I made sure that I nurtured my natural immunity. Okay. Once it surfaced and we were hearing about this thing that we didn't know what it was, and it was supposed to be killing people and doing all this crazy stuff. I'm like, natural immunity up. What do I need to do? Detox, but also make sure that I'm getting the vital nutrients that's going to help keep my immune system where it needs to be. So I didn't have much money at that time, but I worked with what I had and made sure that anything that I was consuming, my diet, it was nutrient rich, okay, to support my wellness during this season. Um, but also, once I got back to work, I was like, okay, still a little leery. And I knew I had to work differently. Okay. I remember I was seeing a trend, especially at that time, because I was in a barbershop, I was primarily working with men, which wasn't my largest market previously. I worked with women and little girls. Okay. I served some men from like braids and locks and stuff like that. But, you know, there was a transition in this environment. Okay. Um, and all I needed was my braider's license to work in the barbershop, which was easy to acquire where I was at. So I'm sitting here like, what in the world? I'm seeing all kind of sores that look scary in the scalp of what looked like some healthy hair. Okay. But when you get down to the parting, I'm like, whoa. And I've seen it too many times. And mind you, these are individuals who I knew because of, I'm not going to get into details because of um, privacy type of stuff, but people that I knew had gotten the shot, the jab, okay, the vaccine type of stuff. Is this connected to this? Like, what is going on? Like, I was alarmed. And with that, before when I was shampoo hair, I was a shampoo girl that got into the hair. Like, my clients love my shampoo experience. And when I hired an assistant, it was like, is she gonna shampoo like you? Because this is what I come here for, type of stuff. But I didn't necessarily use gloves when I shampooed. I started using gloves not only when I shampooed, but as much of the actual styling process as I could because of things that I was seeing that was scaring me. And I was like, whoa. And because this was new to me, I had to find, responsible ways to articulate myself to let the client know, like, look, this is what's going on. I ain't trying to, make a scene and have everybody wondering why I turned you out of my chair and why we not continuing with this service. But in so many words, I'm scared, respectfully. So that was interesting. But those cautions are real. You don't have to. I ain't even gonna front. Like, it was a time where I took the chance. And I did it, and the whole time I was paranoid. And all the tools that I ended up using, it wasn't even worth it because the money that I made for the service, I ended up having to use that to replace everything that I threw away, type of stuff. So, with that being said, terms related to disease, okay? The first term is allergy. And the definition is the reaction due to extreme sensitivity to certain foods, chemicals, or other normally harmless substances. Next, we have contagious disease, also known as communicable disease, disease that is spread from one person to another person. Some of the more contagious diseases are the common cold, ringworm, conjunctivitis, pink eye, viral infections, and natural nail or toe and foot infections. Next, we have contamination, the presence or the reasonably anticipated presence of blood or other potentially infectious materials on an item's surface or visible debris or residues such as dust, hair, and skin. Decontamination is the removal of blood or other potentially infectious materials on an item's surface and the removal of visible debris or residues such as dust, hair, and skin. The diagnosis, determination of the nature of a disease from its symptoms and or diagnostic tests. Federal regulations prohibit salon professionals from performing a diagnosis. Disease, an abnormal condition of all or part of the body or its systems or organs that makes the body incapable of carrying on normal function. Exposure incident, contact with non-intact, also known as broken, skin, blood, bodily fluid, or other potentially infectious materials that is the result of the performance of an employee's duties. Infectious disease, disease caused by pathogenic, harmful organisms that enter the body. An infectious disease may or may not be spread from one person to another. Inflammation, condition in which the body reacts to injury, irritation, or infection. And inflammation is characterized by redness, heat, pain, and swelling. Occupational disease, illnesses resulting from conditions associated with employment, such as prolonged and repeated overexposure to certain products or ingredients. Parasitic disease, disease caused by parasites such as lice and mites. Pathogenic disease, disease produced by organisms including bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. And systemic disease, disease that affects the body as a whole, often due to underfunctioning or overfunctioning internal glands or organs. This disease is carried through the bloodstream or the lymphatic system. Okay. On to viruses. Okay. All right. So a virus is a submicroscopic parasitic agent that is infectious and can live only within other living bacteria, plants, or animal cells. Viruses need a host cell in order to live. Okay. We mentioned that earlier. Again, viruses need a host cell in order to live. Outside the host cells, viruses do not function. They are alive, but they stay dormant until they find a host. Viruses are about 1,000 times smaller than bacteria. Whoa. Viruses live only by taking over host cells and becoming a part of them. But bacteria can live and reproduce on their own. Okay? So these are the differences between bacteria and viruses. Okay? Viruses are a lot smaller. Okay? Meaning microscopic. You have to be under a microscope, have it under a microscope to even see anything. Okay? And bacteria can live and reproduce on their own, while viruses need a host and they're able to lie dormant until they acquire a host. Okay. Viruses are everywhere in our living environment, just waiting to find a host. Okay. Remember the magic school bus? Okay. Remember Ghostbusters type of stuff? Yeah, okay. The visual, painting the picture. The Magic School Bus was one of my favorite shows. Okay, they need to recreate that for this generation, make it more appealing to the eyes so we can learn that type of stuff about anatomy, biology, etc. Viruses are everywhere in our living environment, just waiting to find a host. Real quick, before I continue, um, when I moved, I worked at a new salon for a short window of time. I'll share all of that whole story, the entire story when we get to the end of this, hopefully on graduation day, October 10th. Um, I need to mark that off on my calendar so no clients don't try to book because we're gonna celebrate for real. I might do like I don't know, a 12-hour live broadcast and run a crazy sale or something like that to celebrate completing this assignment. But I'm going to share the story, positive side. I really appreciated how when you walk into that salon, first of all, the door is locked, so someone has to let you in, okay, type of stuff. Um, And first step is go to the bathroom, wash your hands, whether you are a professional, beauty professional that works there, or you're a client getting service. I like that. I just needed to throw that in there. Okay. And I'm going to read that one sentence again for this new paragraph. Viruses are everywhere in our living environment, just waiting to find a host. They can enter the body through the nose, mouth, an open scar, or bodily fluids. Once inside the body, they find a host cell to infect. Influenza is the cold and flu virus that attacks cells in the respiratory or digestive systems and enters through the mouth, nose, or stomach. The human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV, which causes AIDS, attacks the T cells of our immune system. Other viruses that infect humans are measles, mumps, chickenpox, hepatitis, smallpox, human papilloma, which are warts, H1N1, and polio. Now, I put emphasis when we was talking about the HIV AIDS because even though this isn't sexual health, or health class in that regard, what kids go through in school, um, that class, that textbook, those pictures, I'll never forget how that stuff looked and why I don't play when it comes to bumps and sores and itchy and that type of stuff. There, anywhere, okay? So out the way, just stay out of the way as much as possible. But on a serious note, I said that because I was thinking about the commercials that have increased, you know, within the last few years, on radio, on television, about, HIV and AIDS, and mainly HIV, I think. They got some kind of pill that kind of supposed to prevent it or something like that. You know, every time I would hear it, I was just like, I would think back when the COVID, the pandemic and everything, and they were talking about in certain groups that I was in circles that had a higher, awareness of different things, how they were saying some of that was mixed into the vaccine that they were giving people for COVID. And I was like, how y'all giving people HIV/AIDS or whatever in a vaccine for something like COVID? I was confused. And I don't put nothing past them, because it's just like population control. I've heard of known about that for some years now. How else you gonna do it? Okay, type of stuff. So I didn't put nothing past them, and I've heard that on several different lectures and different platforms come up. Surprised, especially being that I remember when I moved down south, after the pandemic, and I tell you, all the public transportation, all the buses was talking about PrEP is what it's called, the commercial, whatever, getting tested and, the rates for that type of stuff. And I'm just like, I was already on some celibacy abstinence. I can't be bothered. I don't want no parts. That even got sealed after that. It was just like, it's very interesting out here. Okay. And all of this goes together, all of my little inserts. But when I was seeing those stores, active open stores in the Scout region, of some of these gentlemen, and then I'm talking about these weren't necessarily like not so attractive looking individuals. These were actually, one specifically that came to mind was someone who had a lot of ladies. I'm gonna just leave it like that. Because I don't want nobody connect no dots, but I was braiding his hair, and there was a bunch of ladies. That's all I'm saying. I'm just like, if you got sores like that there, where else could there be sores like that? Not my business though. I don't want to find out. I'm just taking mental note, connecting dots. Be careful, people that care about your health and well-being, okay? And this is why I always agree that what I do has always been deeper than hair. Okay. Hmm. Generally, bacteria can be treated with antibiotics, but viruses are not affected by antibiotics. Viruses are difficult to diminish without harming the body's own cells or immunity process. Health authorities recommend vaccination to prevent some viruses from growing in the body. Not all viruses have vaccinations. Hepatitis A and B have vaccines, and they are recommended for people who are in direct contact with the public. Consult with your doctor before getting any vaccinations. Blood-borne pathogens. Blood-borne pathogens are disease-causing microorganisms in human blood and other bodily fluids. They include hepatitis B, HBV, hepatitis C, HCV, and HIV. Blood-borne pathogens can be transferred in the salon when the microorganisms enter the body through breaks in the skin, inadvertently caused by hair cutting, nipping with clippers, burns from chemicals, waxing, facial treatments, tweezing, or shaving. Although the natural stylist may not provide these services, it is important to know that the client may have a history of these services and may already have been exposed to blood-borne pathogens. Use great care to avoid cutting or damaging the client's skin during any services. Avoid any transfer of body fluids from anyone. Stylists and clients exposed to viral microorganisms like HIV are at risk for life threatening illness and death. This is why you are required to disinfect and cleanse all tools and surfaces after every service. Hepatitis viral infections. Hepatitis is a blood-borne virus that causes disease and can damage the liver. In general, it is difficult to contract hepatitis. However, hepatitis is easier to contract than HIV because hepatitis can be present in all body fluids of those who are infected. Also, unlike HIV, hepatitis can live on a surface outside the body for a long time. For this reason, it is vital to thoroughly clean and disinfect all surfaces that contact a client. Some of the most common hepatitis varieties that are of concern in the salon are hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and hepatitis D. Hepatitis B is the most difficult type to kill on a surface. So check the label of the disinfectant you use to be sure that the product is effective against hepatitis B. Hepatitis B and C are spread from person to person through blood and less often through other body fluids, such as semen and vaginal secretions. See how it's deeper than hair? Because we're talking about diseases that can be contracted in a hair servicing, establishment or beauty servicing or enhancing establishment, but can also be contracted via, you know, sexual encounters that are unprotected with bodily fluids. I don't like bodily fluids. I don't like people with bodily fluids. I'll be getting, oh, Jesus. Let me stop saying this stuff before people start trying me in weird ways like they have in the last couple of years that I just, in this stage in my life, I'd rather not have to deal with, you know, sure. People do stuff to see how you respond and how you're gonna respond and are you really, this high vibrational, um, positive, influential person type of stuff. Like let's pick and see. I've been through that. So now I'm careful with how much I share about myself in that regard, because I don't need people picking and prying and trying to see how I respond because I'm still human. Okay. Some consider me an earth angel in some places and spaces, but I'm a human. Hepatitis A is generally contracted from eating food contaminated with the virus, usually through fecal material and poor infection control practices. Think of a restaurant worker who used the restroom but did not wash her hands before returning to prepare the next menu item. It is also the type of hepatitis associated with eating raw shellfish. This form of hepatitis used to be called infectious hepatitis. That just really made me want to just. Ugh. Hepatitis B. But that's the crazy thing is when you go to restaurants and stuff, you don't know what type of hygiene. It's not just hair, okay? You go anywhere you go eat, and I've worked in food service, as a teenager and fast food, several of them, and seen things that's like, I don't want to eat here anymore. Hepatitis B, also known as HBV, or serum hepatitis is a more serious infection and is often spread by body fluids or sexual contact. Symptoms may last for months or even be non existent. Some hepatitis B patients can develop chronic hepatitis infection without an acute stage. Some people recover from it. However, some develop permanent liver damage and about 10% become carriers. Liver cancer is known to occur in long-term carriers after 30 or more years of living with the virus. A vaccine series is available for hepatitis B and immunization. The act of making a human unsusceptible to a pathogen is highly recommended for those whose work may expose them to the risk of infection. Okay. Hepatitis C, also known as HCV, hepatitis symptoms, HZV, I said that right. All right. Hepatitis C symptoms are similar to those of hepatitis B, and it is sometimes associated with HIV infection. Hepatitis C is the most often the type of hepatitis infection people acquire from blood transfusions and intravenous drug use. Even with current blood screening technology, the risk of HCV infection from a transfusion is approximately 1 in 10,000. It can also be transmitted through injuries involving broken skin through sexual contact. Hepatitis C patients develop the chronic form, which can occur without a preceding acute stage. All right, so we have a FYI I'm going to read before we go to hepatitis D. FYI, the main source for spreading diseases are as follows. 1, unclean hands, surfaces, and implements. 2, open sores. 3, pus. 4, mouth and nose discharges. 5, common use of silverware, cups, or towels. 6, unprotected and uncovered coughing or sneezing. And 7, spitting. Another thing with the common use of silverware, cups, or towels, do eat out, and they're using reusable dishes, cups, forks, silverware, that type of stuff. Um, Preventative maintenance as much as possible. Ask for disposable straws, um, hot water to dip your um, tools, your like forks, spoons, knives, and stuff in. Um, and also asking for plasticware, if they have that, that type of stuff, because all dishwashing systems aren't perfect. I'm just say that, okay? Just whether it's human or a dishwasher, okay? I'm a person that likes to hand wash my dishes at home versus using dishwasher. And I've been like that all my life. I've always had, dishwashers at home, but I prefer to hand wash dishes to make sure they're clean. That's just me though. Okay. Hepatitis D can develop only in people who have the hepatitis B virus. This finding reinforces for immunization. HDV is a serious viral infection that is much more likely than other types of hepatitis to cause permanent liver damage. Thus, it is all the more imperative for people at risk of exposure to blood or other potentially infectious materials, OPIM, to seek the vaccination series. Okay. I remember that being introduced, when I was in high school, where the physician would recommend getting it, the HPV um, vaccines and stuff like that. And it's so crazy because I thought about this earlier and I didn't mention it, but with that being introduced for the first time, me hearing that at that age, and then thinking about, my teenage client whose hair I did, for her to prepare to go back to school, certain things, if you're not in the loop or around things, you won't know. You don't know what you don't know. So, when I do have, students that I'm doing their hair, nobody is able to go without their phone these days. Okay. So what they're looking at and listening to and, that type of stuff is what, if I'm paying attention, I'm looking at and I'm listening to or hearing or whatever during the time we spend together. So I'm listening, because I got one earbud in listening to what I want to listen to, but I also have my ear open to make sure that I can communicate properly when need be. Um, yeah, TikTok. I'm late to TikTok. And although, when I set up my TikTok, they ask you the type of things that you're interested in. So a lot of the things that I'm interested in, I don't get to see the other side of TikTok. I said, okay, I really got to do what I'm doing. And I can't let the interruptions stop me because I'm scared for these babies. And even though she's in 11th grade student in high school, in my mind, in my eyes, that's a baby, that's a child, okay? Because I'm super grown, okay? So, yeah, like just listening to or overhearing, because at first I wasn't listening, I was just overhearing. And then it turned into me listening. Okay, I ain't being nosy in their business unless I can't help it because they ain't got earphones on and they put me in their business. But when I tell you everything was talking about sex, okay, teenagers in high school, her peers, the posts and everything that were the most alarming to me. And I'm trying not to judge because, I don't want to run the kids away that can potentially learn something of value from me and my work. But it's scary outside for these babies, okay? And they don't even know how scary it is. I'm sitting here listening to, the little boys, talking about the hoes and, you know, how they basically F them and leave them. And I know that's not new. I know that stuff was going on when I was in high school too. But it's levels. I mean, it's just like the mentality is everybody is disposable. Okay. Um, Females and males is like already heartbroken in, middle school, high school, and don't trust and experimenting with, the same sex or, you know, just being reckless with the opposite sex things. However, it was a lot. I was overstimulated, okay? I just needed to reset, take a shower, and go to bed after all of that. When I got home, I didn't want to listen to nothing else. It was deep. But with that being said, this chapter is important because all the reasons I already said. And now, with that being said, we're going into HIV/AIDS. So we're done with all the hepatitises, and now we're talking about HIV/AIDS, okay? Human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV, is the blood-borne virus that causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS. HIV weakens the body's immune system and its ability to fight infections and cancer. HIV is spread through contact with infected blood, body fluids, secretions, excretions, except sweat, mucus, membranes, and non intact skin. The virus that causes HIV is spread mainly through the sharing of needles by intravenous IV drug users and by unprotected sexual contact. HIV is considered to be a sexually transmitted disease, a STD, because it can be contracted and spread through unprotected sex. Less commonly, HIV is spread through accidents with needles in healthcare settings. That's scary. The virus is less likely to enter the bloodstream through cuts and sores. A person can be infected with HIV for many years without having symptoms, but testing can determine whether a person is infected within 6 months after exposure to the virus. Sometimes people who are HIV positive have never been tested and do not know they have the potential to infect other people. A person cannot get HIV from bug bites, public baths, swimming pools or whirlpools, touching, holding hands, kissing, sharing a drink, or using a public telephone. There is no documentation that any one person has ever been infected with HIV at a hair salon. However, if a person with HIV is cut, the tool is contaminated and must be cleaned and disinfected. Continuing to use a contaminated implement without cleaning and disinfecting it puts you and others in the salon at risk for infection. Fungi slash fungus. Fungi are microscopic. Fungi are microscopic plant parasites that include molds, mildews, and yeast. They can produce contagious diseases such as ringworm, mildew. Another fungus affects plants or grows on inanimate objects, but does not cause human infections in the salon. Tinea is the technical term for ringworm. It is characterized by itching scales and sometimes by painful circular lesions. Several patches may be present at one time. Tinea is caused by a fungal organism and not a parasite, as the old fashioned term ringworm seems to suggest. All forms of tinea are contagious and can be easily transmitted from one person to another. Infected skin, scales, or hairs that contain the fungi are known to spread the disease. Bathtubs, swimming pools, and unclean personal articles are also sources of transmission. Practicing approved cleaning and disinfection procedures will help prevent the spread of the disease in the salon. Tinea capititis is another type of fungal infection characterized by red papules or spots at the opening of the hair follicles. The patches spread and the hair becomes brittle. Hair often breaks off, leaving only a stump, or the hair may be shed from the enlarged open follicle. Tinea favosa, also known as Tinea flavus, is characterized by dry, sulfur yellow, cup like crust on the scalp called scutula. Scutula has a distinctive odor. Scars from tinea favosa are bald patches that may be either pink or white and shiny. Tinea barbae, the most frequently encountered fungal infection resulting from hair surfaces, is also known as barber's itch. Tinea barbae is a superficial fungal infection that commonly affects the skin. It is primarily limited to the bearded areas of the face and neck or around the scalp. This infection occurs almost exclusively in older adolescent and adult males. A person with tinea barbae may have deep inflamed or non inflamed patches of skin on the face or the nape of the neck. By practicing excellent cleaning and disinfection procedures, people can greatly reduce the transmission of this superficial fungus. Natural stylists who use clippers or blades must reduce all risk of transmitting diseases by removing all hair clippings and debris from clippers with compressed air, using clipper disinfectant sprays, and removing non electrical parts and cleaning and disinfecting properly. Always read and then refer to the manufacturer's directions for cleaning and storing. Okay, so we have another did you know? Okay. So, did you know pathogenic bacteria, viruses, and fungi can enter the body in these ways? A break in the skin, as with a cut, pimple, or scratch, the mouth through breathing or swallowing air or food, the nose, eyes, or ears. The body fights infection by using these defenses. Unbroken skin, the body's first line of defense. Body secretions such as perspiration, sebum, earwax, and digestive juices. White blood cells that destroy bacteria, and antitoxins that counteract the toxins produced by the bacteria. Okay. All right, we got a couple more chapters, a couple more pages before we did good today. They're real good. Just don't let my smoothie sit out like this. It's kind of thick. It's the oats, the almonds, the seeds. Sometimes you gotta drink your food, okay? We are an hour and 48 minutes in. It's presently 4:18 p.m. And we're getting through this. Okay. All right. Parasites. Parasites are living organisms that feed, grow, and thrive on or in a host organism. Parasites need host organisms to survive. Parasites live in and on living plants, animals, and humans. Internal parasites are found in our food and water, as well as in improperly cooked fish and meat. External parasites that affect excuse me, external parasites that affect humans include ticks, mites, and fleas. Pediculosis capitatus is the infestation of the hair and scalp with head lice. As these parasites feed on the scalp, it begins to itch. If the scalp is scratched, it can cause an infection. Head lice are transmitted from one person to another by contact with infested hats, combs, brushes, and other personal articles. You can distinguish head lice from dandruff flakes by looking closely at the scalp with a magnifying glass. All right, ugh, them pictures, y'all. So there's a picture of the ringworm, also known as the tinea, and the other one is what the head lice looks like under a microscope. And put a card over that because Jesus, I can't look at that while I'm properly practicing state board approved cleaning and disinfection procedures will prevent the spread of this infestation. Several non-prescription medications are available. You should not perform a service on anyone who has head lice. A client with this condition must be referred to a physician or a pharmacist. It is your responsibility to maintain a healthy environment for yourself, staff, and clients. Always practice the state procedures for cleansing and disinfecting tools, chairs, and entire salon environment. Scabies. Another contagious skin disease is caused by the itch mite. Severe itching occurs when the mites feed and burrow under the skin. The skin becomes inflamed with blisters and pustules, which are pimples with pus, form from this infestation. Extreme itching creates infection. Practicing extreme care to clean and disinfect all tools, all surfaces, towels, headrests, capes, chairs, and equipment must be properly treated with an EPA registered disinfectant. You are not required to perform a service on anyone who has any contagious disorder. As a professional, gently and discreetly tell the client your concerns and refer him to a physician. Immunity. Immunity is the ability to neutralize pathogens that have gained entrance to the body and to protect the body against infection or illness. The immune system is an incredible protection mechanism. The immune system is made up of white blood cells, proteins, tissues, and organs that defend the body against millions of bacterial, microbes, viruses, toxins, and parasites. Immunity against disease can be natural or acquired and is a sign of good health. Naturally acquired immunity is partly inherited and partly developed through healthy living. An example of naturally acquired immunity is the transfer of antibodies in the placenta from mother to fetus during pregnancy and after birth from breast milk. Artificially acquired immunity is immunity from the body, is immunity that the body develops after overcoming a disease, receiving inoculations such as flu vaccinations, or having exposure to natural allergens such as pollen, cat dander, and ragweed. All right. Principles of prevention and control. We have two cautions here. I'm trying to figure out if I want to read them first or actually read the chapter. We got cautions and FYIs. Okay. Let's read this caution first. Avoid putting other clients and staff at risk. You are not required to treat anyone who you think may have a contagious disease. It will be uncomfortable to tell the client your immediate concerns. However, it is vital that you take a professional approach and not a personal approach regarding this matter. It will not be easy to tell any client there is a problem that must be addressed. Always have the lead stylist or salon manager check the scalp when you first notice a problem. Discuss your concerns regarding the client's situation with your manager, how to handle this problem, and who will communicate it to the client. Once that is established, try the following approach. And this is an example. Miss Brown, I'm so glad you were able to come in because I noticed a difference in your scalp. Have you noticed anything different? I believe that you may have a scalp disorder and I am concerned. For your safety, I think you should wait on having your service and see a physician as soon as possible. Gently remove all capes, towels, and tools as you are talking to a client. Do not allow the client to talk you into performing any service. Okay. That's reiterating kind of what we spoke about a little bit earlier in more detail as to how to handle the situation. Okay. So, the principles of prevention and control. The primary difference between the professional and non professional natural stylists is in the high standards of health and decontamination systems maintained in the salon. An orderly and clean hair salon offers a harmonious, safe environment for the client. It is paramount for natural hair care specialists to keep the salon environment free from dirt, dust, oils, infectious diseases, and germs. It is the natural stylist's responsibility to clients and coworkers to ensure their safety. Providing a harmonious and safe environment involves more than just weekly cleaning. It is the continuous practice of preventative procedures, the the expedient cleaning and care of tools and equipment surfaces, and the personal hygiene that minimizes and controls the spread of infection. If a client or coworker becomes seriously ill due to inadequate care of tools or an unsafe work environment, the salon owner can be held liable and the business may be irreparably damaged. If clients lose confidence in the safety of the salon, they will not return for future services. As a salon entrepreneur, you must realize that it is good business to have a safe, harmonious work environment. It is also the law. Salon wellness principles of prevention. The most well designed salon can lose its attractiveness if it is not routinely going through a decontamination process. To decontaminate is to reduce or prevent the spread of disease caused by infectious germs in the work environment. Decontamination is important for preventing exposure to blood, infectious material, dust, dirt, and other contaminants and pathogens in the salon environment. There are two methods of decontamination. Decontamination method one, cleaning and disinfecting. This is when you are cleaning with a detergent and then disinfecting with an EPA approved disinfectant. Decant- Decontamination method two. This is cleaning and sterilizing, cleaning with a detergent and then sterilizing through heat and pressure in an autoclave. An autoclave kills spore forming bacteria on implements. Okay. FYI. Okay. It is good business practice to have a safe and harmonious working environment. It is paramount to ensure that the salon is free from dirt, germs, and infectious diseases. A clean and safe salon environment builds confidence in the clients and is necessary for keeping their business. Now you see what I'm saying? It's kind of repetitive, with real reason. It rewords it, but it reiterates, some of the importance of, you know, this chapter and prevention, control, and all of that. Okay. All right, 2 hours. We got this. All right, so it's gonna elaborate on decontamination methods 1 and 2. And I'm feeling like that's a good place for us to leave off today. Let's see, because we're going into antiseptics and then natural antiseptics, disinfectants. I think that's a good place to pick up with tomorrow. Yeah, we covered the heaviest part. At least for me, it's heavy because, you know, right out of college, I was thinking about going to school for nursing to make my grandfather happy. And because he thought I should either be a legal professional like a lawyer or something or a nurse. He didn't think a hairdresser, what I told him at the age of 9, was a real career. And it's interesting, now I'm looking back all these days, all these years, and 20 years in the industry, I understand why he said that because back then, and even today, sometimes this work isn't respected to the degree in which it should be because it's real work. Okay, I understand that. You, like it stated earlier, professionals versus non-professionals, and the difference between the two is real. Um, but you know, that doesn't mean that the work itself isn't professional work and it's not a real career that deserves adequate and proper compensation for the service that is provided. Okay, because you know like myself, I'm not going to say I'm a medical professional or I have that level of degree attained or experience and etc. However, I do know that I've had, you know, clients that have shared more with me than their own physicians, doctors probably know in regards to their health, okay? Um, and confidentiality as well. So with that, let me pop in my collar. Let me stop playing, kid. Finish this up. All right, so decontamination method 1 involves 2 steps: cleaning and disinfecting. Remember that when you clean, you must remove all visible dirt and debris from tools, implements, and equipment by washing with liquid soap and warm water and by using a clean and disinfected nail brush to scrub any grooved or hinged portions of the item. I'm being moved since it's so close by to show what that looks like. Because I had to acquire this in school. I didn't have this all my career. I used, like a regular brush or a comb, something like that, or even my hands. But I traditionally don't use like products that aren't easy to clean um, off of my tools. So I haven't even really used it, but I have it because I was supposed to have it in my kit. Okay. I just wanted to show that real quick. All right. Matter of fact, the kit that I purchased to do my at-home manicures and pedicures, that's what it came from. So Maybe I could just put it back in my kit and use it for what it's for. But anyway, focus. All right. A surface is properly cleaned when the number of contaminants on the surface is greatly reduced. By reducing the contaminants, you reduce the risk of infection. The vast majority of contaminants and pathogens can be removed from the surface of tools and implements through proper cleaning. This is why cleaning is an important part of disinfecting tools and equipment. A surface must be properly cleaned before it can be properly disinfected. Using a disinfectant without cleaning first is like using mouthwash without brushing your teeth. It just does not work properly. Clean surfaces can still harbor small amounts of pathogens, but the presence of fewer pathogens means infections are less likely to be spread. Putting antiseptics on your skin or washing your hands with soap and water will drastically lower the number of pathogens on your hands. However, it does not clean them properly. The proper cleaning of the hands requires rubbing hands together and using liquid soap, warm running water, a nail brush, and a clean towel. Okay. Another way to, let me finish this. A proper hand washing later in the chapter. Do not underestimate the importance of proper cleaning and hand washing. They are the most powerful and important ways to prevent the spread of infection. It's going to say that a million times in this chapter and throughout the book because of its importance, and I agree. Okay, before all this and outside of doing hair, okay, I always my hands a lot of times can be dry or ashy, whatever, depending on what type of soap I'm using. If I'm like using soap outside and stuff that are harsher and drying to the skin, because I do it a lot. Um, but I use more moisturizing soaps at home because I know that I'm washing my hands a lot. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so with the tools, a good habit that I practiced or whatever was purchasing of the same types of combs and brushes, um, just in case I need to use them, like if I got appointments back to back and my timing in between doesn't allow me to do what I do, which is clean the combs in between appointments. Okay, so I know a lot of times, and I work in the real world for a long time, and I'm a realist as well. And I know that, some people take this more serious than others, while others don't even care. And that's just real life. Um, that's how I was able to get ringworm on my foot from the nail salon type of stuff. And one time went to get a massage at the place I was paying a $89 a month, $89.95 a month membership, and was barely using it like I should and could because of timing. But to get massages and let them convince me and doing a facial, and I don't let people play on my face like that. Um, and I had a boil on my face for like a couple weeks after she injected whatever she did to my face, type of thing that was supposed to brighten my skin. But yeah, that type of stuff. So, um, and me being me, not wanting to make a big fuss and get businesses and professionals or people that work in professional spaces like that in trouble, I've kind of like not handled those situations in ways that I could have to get, compensated or get handled better, but real life experience, okay? On the other end of it. Um, Cleaning the tools. So it says with the disinfectant method one with soap and water. So you could do that in hair school. We use like shampoo. You can use like dish detergent, like Dawn is pretty good for those who use like heavy, greasy, and alcohol based like products and stuff like that. Um, or you traditionally have clients that have like flaky, dry, dandruff scalp and stuff like that. For the most part, I kind of work with the same clients. I haven't recently been acquiring that many new clients. So even if a client did come to me with some sort of, scalp challenges or issues with recommendations and going to their dermatologist and doing what needed to be done, we've seen improvement where it wasn't something that we continued seeing over time. Okay. I'm grateful to have that type of clientele. Like when they come to me, if those types of things are issues, they're really looking for results. And if I give them, information as to from my professional experience, I've seen work, we've seen improvement, and we didn't have to continue dealing with it, at least not to the degree in which they came to me if it was bad. Because for me, I can soak combs and tools and stuff in barbicide, but in my mind, when I see certain things, I just rather throw it away and replace it. Like, and I've been like that for a long time. It's easier in my mind to just, throw it away versus soaking it in barbicide. Of course, cleaning it, soap and water, and then the barbicide. So, and I've done that a lot. Okay, I've thrown away even capes too, capes, combs, brushes, clips that I had to use in those instances. Um, but with that being said, um, washing, when you go to shampoo your next client, or when you finish the appointment and you're cleaning up for the day, however it goes, whatever it is for you, taking time to clean your products before the product sits on it, a lot of times makes it easy, for your for your tools to stay clean. Because a lot of times when products sit on them, on the tools, that's when they become harder to clean and you might need like a nail brush or a brush or something like that. I just needed to throw that in there for whatever reason, because that's just something that I do, and it helps keep my life a little bit easier. It helps me preserve my combs, brushes, and tools, and that type of stuff. Okay. Um, and quality makes a difference too. It makes a difference. The quality of tools that you buy, when they're of quality and may cost a little bit more, you want to take better care of them because you don't want to have to keep replacing them and stuff like that. Okay. All right. Clean surfaces can still harbor small amounts of pathogens, but the presence of fewer pathogens means infections are less likely to be spread. Putting antiseptics on your skin or washing your hands with soap and water will drastically lower the number of pathogens on your hands. I did read this already, but I'm going to continue. However, it does not clean them properly. The proper cleaning of the hands requires rubbing hands together and using liquid soap, warm water, a nail brush, and a clean towel. Proper hand washing later in the chapter, okay? There's a whole section on proper hand washing. Do not underestimate the importance of proper cleaning and hand washing. They are the most powerful and important ways to prevent the spread of infection. There are three ways to clean your tools or implements. Wash with soap and warm water, then scrub with a clean and properly disinfected nail brush. Use an ultrasonic unit and use a cleaning solvent. The second step of contamination method one is disinfection. Remember that disinfection is the process that eliminates most, but not necessarily all, microorganisms on non-living surfaces. This process is not effective against bacterial spores. In the salon setting, disinfection is extremely effective in controlling microorganisms on surfaces such as shears, nippers, and other multi-use tools and equipment. Multi-use and single-use tools are discussed later in this chapter. Any disinfectant used in the salon should carry an Environmental Protection Agency registration number, and the label should clearly state the specific organisms the solution is effective in killing when used according to the label instructions. Remember that disinfectants are products that destroy all bacteria, fungi, and viruses, but not spores on surfaces. Disinfectants are not for use on human skin, hair, or nails. Never use disinfectants as hand cleaners because this can cause skin irritation and allergy, a reaction due to extreme sensitivity to certain foods, chemicals, or other normally harmless substances. Before I get to decontamination method two, um, I'm going to briefly talk about it more in the chapter. I can't remember specifically, but um, what I would do in a lot of cases, they have the barbicide glass where you fill it up with barbicide, diluted with water or whatever for your tools to sit in at the workstation. What I would do, I kept a spray bottle with barbicide in it, and I would have like a little caddy in the salon and barbershop when I worked, which had my shampoos and conditioners, um, processing caps, different things that I would need at the shampoo bowl, detangling comb, that type of stuff. Um, but then I will also have like cleaning stuff. So I like Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap. It's multi-purpose. I like to have that along with the barbicide in some form. Um, so I've had the just liquid where it was in a spray bottle. And then I would spray that on the tools after I complete a service. And while if I know like I'm either finished for the day or I have another client that I'll be shampooing, what I would normally do is let the barbicide sit on my tools or whatever. I would spray them down really good. And then I would rinse it, rinse them and let them dry while I am, of course, I would rinse them off first, get the product and stuff, clean them up and everything. But do that and let them sit and dry, you know, while I'm shampooing or cleaning up and then put them away. Um, that's one way. There's also barbicide in the can. I've seen something Marvicide. It's tucked away. I got one over there. Matter of fact, I'm going to grab it real quick because I'm curious to see what it says. These are my gloves, my first aid kit, and the Marvicide spray disinfectant. So I've had the Barbicide one, and then I wanted to try this one to see how I felt about it. And I'm going to read the can. Marvicide spray disinfectant. It kills germs, eliminates odors, prevent mold and mildew for up to 7 days. Okay, kills cold and flu viruses, kills the virus that causes COVID-19, kills 99.9% of bacterial, sanitizing in 20 seconds, can be used on soft surfaces. So I've used this on like this, the styling chair or whatever that may be like leather or something like that. I've sprayed the chair with this, okay? This says it kills Staphylococcus aureus, Salmonella inversa, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, strep, Streptococcus pyogenes, a whole bunch of stuff that I can't pronounce, but a couple of the things that we most definitely read today, including MRSA and Staphylococcus, okay? Active ingredients, a whole bunch of stuff, chemicals, okay? It contains sodium nitrate, keep out of reach of children. Formulated for hospital, school, hotel, motel, office, restaurant, locker and restroom, factory, institution, home, beauty shop, and barbershop. Spray disinfectant, shake before using, and directions for use. Okay. This product This product is not to be used as a terminal, sterilant, high-level disinfectant or any surface or instrument that one is introduced directly into the human body, either into or in contact with the bloodstream or normally sterile areas of the body, and two, intact mucous membranes, but which does not ordinarily penetrate the blood barrier or otherwise enter normally sterile areas of the body. This product may be used to pre-clean or decontaminate critical or semi-critical medical devices to sterilization or high-level disinfection. It kills HIV-1, AIDS virus, or pre-cleaned environmental surfaces, objects previously soiled with blood and bodily fluids in healthcare settings or other settings in which there is unexpected likelihood of soiling of inanimate surfaces, objects with blood or body fluids, and in which the surface and objects likely to be soiled with blood or body fluids can be associated with potential for transmission of HIV. Okay. It says that it's virucidal and all that it kills, and tells you how to use it. Okay. So there's different sprays like that after you wash and cleanse, the stuff, rather than submerging it or sitting it in, actual barbicide. You can use those as well. The barbicide or one like that. This isn't like a knockoff because I think they were about the same price. Okay. I just was trying different brands to kind of just see how I felt about it overall. And I think that one had it said eliminates over. So that was why I considered trying that one. But then since I've been in school, I discovered that there's barbicide wipes for like surfaces. Because traditionally, what I would do is either use paper towels or actual towels that were going to get washed anyway to spray down the surfaces, the chair, and all that with the barbicide, or use Clorox wipes or something like that, and then wipe it down like that, or the net part on the shampoo bowl, um, like where other clients are gonna their skin is gonna contact or whatever, that type of stuff. You know, it's important to sterilize and stuff like that. Okay, after each client. All right, let's finish up. Okay, we have another caution here. Do not combine disinfectants. Read and follow directions carefully. For any disinfectant to work properly, it is important that you measure or dilute it according to instructions. We had another caution over here that I skipped over. Disinfectants are pesticides and can be harmful if absorbed through the skin. All disinfectants clearly state on the label that you should avoid skin contact. This means avoiding contact with your skin as well as the client's. Do not put your fingers directly into any disinfecting solution. Disinfectants are pesticides and can be harmful if absorbed through the skin. If you mix a disinfectant in a container that is not labeled by the manufacturer, the container must be properly labeled with the contents and the date it was mixed. All concentrated disinfectants must be diluted exactly as instructed by the manufacturer on the container's label. So I think a lot of times where, people don't necessarily have a desire to do that type of stuff, but want to still make sure they're doing their part as far as proper decontamination of their tools and surfaces and workspaces, that's when those cans and those wipes come in handy because, it's already proportioned as to how much water versus how much of the chemical is needed. Um, it's important or healthy to use gloves when when using, those chemicals to protect your skin. I've had times when I've done that and when I haven't, and I noticed that my hands would feel more raw or rough after I use, certain chemicals, cleaning agents without gloves. Okay. So that's what it talked about there. Okay. Decontamination method 2 also has 2 steps: cleaning and sterilizing. The word sterilize is often used incorrectly. Sterilization is the process that completely destroys all microbial life, including spores. Sterilization is the highest form of decontamination. Under most circumstances, a natural stylist is not required to perform sterilization procedures. However, you will need to understand how to use and practice sterilization. The sterilization process actually kills germs, including the more resistant form of bacterial spores. To sterilize tools and implements, a sterilizing chamber, such as a high pressure steam autoclave, is used. The steam autoclave, often seen in dentist's office, doctor's office, or nail salons, works like a pressure cooker. Simply exposing instruments to steam is not enough. To be effective against disease causing pathogens, the steam must be pressurized in an autoclave so the steam penetrates the outer coats of the spore forming bacteria. Dry heat forms of sterilization are less efficient and require longer times at higher temperatures. Dry heat sterilization is not recommended for use in salons. Most people without medical training do not understand how to use an autoclave. For example, dirty implements cannot be properly sterilized without first being properly cleaned. Autoclaves need regular maintenance and testing to ensure they are in good working order. Color indicator strips on autoclave bags can provide false readings, so do not rely on them to determine whether instruments have been sterilized. These strips are only an indication, not verification that the autoclave is working. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, requires that autoclaves be tested weekly to ensure they are properly sterilizing implements. The accepted method is called a spore test. Sealed packages containing test organisms are subjected to a typical sterilization cycle and then sent to a contact laboratory that specializes in testing autoclave performance. Other regular maintenance is required to ensure the autoclave reaches the correct temperature and pressure. Keep in mind that when an autoclave does not reach the intended temperature for killing microorganisms, it may instead create a warm, moist place where pathogenic organisms can grow and thrive. Salons should always follow the autoclave manufacturer's recommended schedule for cleaning, changing the water, arranging service visits, replacing parts, and doing any required maintenance. Okay. Caution, do not combine. Okay, I read that one already. All right, so we covered a lot in 2.5 hours today. I feel like that made up for last week. Um, last week's interruptions of our flow. I was going to read this when the video cut off. What was I going to read? Dispelling the myths of natural textured hair. Of course, our last chapter was history and career opportunities, but this is what I was about to read and end it when it cut off. Thanks to a long list of misconceptions, untruths, and misleading misinformation, people in the African American community have been deterred and discouraged from truly embracing their natural hair. Society has sent the message that straight, long, blonde hair is the preferred look. Some believe that natural textured hair, which has a tight, curly, or coily pattern, is bad hair. But hair that is long, straight, and silky is good hair or beautiful hair. For decades, African Americans believed that their hair was ugly or bad, and that the only way to make their hair fit this culture's beauty standards and make it good was to change or remove the natural texture. Unfortunately, men and women of color still believe these myths. Our hair has always been a mystery, a dark and gloomy subject. In the past, the cosmetology industry and hair care product companies did not teach the features, benefits, and hair care procedures of our textured tresses. As professionals, we are here to remove the myths, provide excellent salon service, and educate the clients about home care regimens. The myths and facts discussed throughout this textbook will shine a bright light on the subject and remove some of the negative images people of color have adopted regarding textured hair and natural hair care. Of course, they would cut it off when I was reading that. Of course. But no, me, we're going to get it. We're gonna get it in the way we're supposed to when we're supposed to. Okay, so it looks like tomorrow's going to be reiterating some of the things that we talked about that I added in there from my personal experience. Okay, salon wellness, professional salon image, your professional responsibility, and proper hand washing is what we'll close out with. But we'll also be discussing an exposure incident, with contact of blood or body fluids, how to properly, handle those situations. Um, we're going to talk about more in depth a little bit. There's a paragraph or so on hand washing, cleaning towels, linens, and capes, and your system pretty much for disinfecting. Okay, knowing the difference between multi-use and single-use items. Safety tips for disinfectants. There's always and never. Okay, do you disinfect or dispose? Okay, proper disinfection with what level of chemical for what, scenario or situation. And, a little bit about natural antiseptics as well. Okay. So that's where we'll be picking up tomorrow, inshallah. Okay. God willing, of course. Thank God we didn't have the interruptions that we've been dealing with today. It's 5:05. Let's go ahead and end this here because I got other things to do. So next time, peace and love.